Welcome to No Stage, Just a Chair. I'm Brian, and this is me trying to figure things out without pretending I already know how. If I sound foolish, that means it's working. Music sounds a little 80s? Good. I was basically raised on synths and questionable hair choices. And if any of this sounds familiar, pull up a chair. Episode 21. So I can remember it's Cleveland, Ohio. I'm on the road. I'm traveling, playing music. And after I got done with the show, this guy came up and made his way onto the stage. And when somebody gets onto the stage, you usually like just every person doesn't make it on the stage. So as soon as you see a stranger on the stage ready to ask questions, you know that there's something going on there. You know that they have some sort of credibility. And I saw this guy looking at my rig, and I was a keyboard player. So I had my keyboard and all my effects racks and all the things that I had. And I walked up and he put his hand out and shook his hand. And he told me he was the creative director for this artist that will remain nameless, this pop act. Great pop singer, Disney Channel kind of thing. And he had all these questions about my rig. And I just started answering them all. And as I was answering them all, I was like, this would just be easier if I would just unscrew the back of my rig and open it all up and show him how everything is wired, how everything is set up, the what I use all these different pieces for. And as I started unpacking it, he kind of looked at me and it kind of surprised me when he looked at me, but he looked at me and he was like, "Are you sure you should be showing me all this? Why wouldn't I?" And he said, "Well, this is kind of your thing." I was like, "Yeah, it is my thing. That's exactly why I feel fine with showing it to you." And I just told him point blank. I said, "Here's the reality. If I gave you my rig verbatim, exactly, if I could just, bibbity boppity boo, clone rigs and send you out with one for a year, and I could send you with the exact same one that I have a year from now, you would have discovered things that this rig did because of the way that you play, the way that you think, the way that you do things. And we could actually sit down and compare notes and learn things from each other." And that's kind of the way that I'm wired. That's the way that I think about it, because I looked at him and went, "You're not going to take my work. You're not going to infringe on my world. You're not going to take any of these things from me." Because reality is, if you're just going to imitate me, then why not just come to the original? I'm not scared of imitation. I'm not scared of people trying to imitate me. I'm not scared of somebody trying to copy what I do, because it's what I genuinely am. And nobody else can take that from me. And I really believe it. And it kind of surprised me in the moment that he kind of had this attitude of not wanting to steal my thing. And I decided in that moment, I think I decided before that moment, because it wasn't even a question in my head. It wasn't a question of whether or not I wanted to share it. Of course I wanted to share it. I'll show it to I'll show it to anybody. I'll have this conversation with anybody. I'd had hundreds of conversations with people writing articles for things, or doing Q&As before or after shows, or any of the things that we were doing, because it's like, I'd rather just be an open book. I don't need to hide what I'm doing, because I found this by being me. And at the end of the day, it is rooted in my identity. And I don't need to protect my identity. I don't need to protect it. Now, there's a slight caveat. Actually, I'm not even going to go into that slight caveat. I don't need to protect who I am. He wasn't here to harm me. He wasn't here to take from me. And as a result, I felt real comfortable and real confident in just leaning into that moment. I'll share. And in sharing, that actually opens up a conversation where I can share and he can share, and this can go both ways. And all of a sudden, we walk away, both of us better musicians, both of us more grounded in who we are, and both of us better able to do something really beautiful. I think that's kind of the point. And my thought in that is that confidence is rooted in identity, not in protection. I don't need to protect who I am. I don't even need to prove who I am. I've said this to people a lot, because at this point in my life, I'm old enough that when I walk into rooms that I have to prove myself, I'm kind of done with it already. I know who and what I am. There's not this little button where I have to puff up my chest and prove that I belong there. Now, I'll be honest, there are moments that I feel that pressure, but I don't like that version of me. I don't like that version of what's brought to the surface when I feel that way. I don't like that insecure part of me. I don't like that performing part of me. I don't like that shallow part of me that feels the need to prove that I belong. I want to just live inside of the skin that I have. And that choice wasn't from generosity. I think generosity was part of it. I wanted to share, but that wasn't the root. The root of that choice was clarity. And I keep using that word a lot, and it's been a word that's kind of orbiting my life a lot here lately. And I've probably used it a lot in these episodes, but it was born from that clarity. And I'll admit, I've made plenty of scared choices in my life, and I will probably make more scared choices in the future. But that moment wasn't one of them. And that moment was a good defining moment for me because I was able to stand on my feet in that moment and know who I was. And I want to say this out loud. Fear is instinctive. Fear is the thing that naturally wells up in us. And confidence is cultivated. I know the things that I want to cultivate. I know the things that I want to fertilize. I know the things that I want to encourage, and fear isn't one of them. And I have this part of me, and as I was writing this episode and kind of getting ready for it, I have this question that I don't know how to categorize it yet. I don't know how to feel about it yet, but I have this suspicion that a lot of our most natural responses are our most selfish ones. And there's a part of me that wishes that wasn't the case. And there's a part of me that hopes that that's not the case. I hope that I'm wrong about that. But when I look at myself, a lot of my most natural responses are my selfish ones. And the best ones, my best responses, the responses that I'm the most proud of, the responses that I feel the most whole in, are the ones that have to be practiced. I have to practice them. I have to create a ritual and a reminder and a routine. Again, words that I feel myself saying a lot. Those are the ones that plant something inside of me that are really valuable and that I'm really proud of, and that I really like a good sense of hope and pleasure kind of comes up inside of me when I do those things that I have to practice. They may not be natural, but they're good. There's also this thought and idea that kind of comes along with it. I've talked about the food truck festival that I did, H&H. And with that food truck festival, there were a lot of things that season of life kind of unearthed in me. And at one point there was an event. So H&H was about 50,000 people a month, 500,000 people a year. 9 months out of the year, we would do this event, final Friday of each month. It was I loved it. I'm really proud of the things that came from that season of time. And about 5 years into it, we were running gangbusters. And there was this event that went to the city, and they asked for permission to start a food truck event next door to us. Like, not the same night. Yes, the same night. Not just the same night, but literally next door to us. And there was a part of me that it kind of pissed me off a little bit. And they said some things in the public that were not true, not accurate. They were trying to kind of spread this disinformation, and they were trying to win by slinging mud. And the funny thing is, when they started slinging mud, everybody just kind of started ignoring them, because we had built this track record of trust over the years. And everybody was pretty confident and clear on who we were. And I literally had people from the event that would come to me and tell me about things that were being said and like just untrue things that were being repeated. And it's kind of funny because when they wanted to launch this event, my attitude all along the way was, let them do whatever it is that they want to do. Because if they're just going to imitate us, then why go to the imitation? If all they're going to do is try and draft off of our victories, then let them. Because I'm not scared of that. I'm not scared of, again, this is the same point, but I guess it's kind of related. But the clarity for me in that moment was that I could lead from my yes. Let them, because we know who we are. And it reminded me, as I was looking at it, as I was thinking about it, as I was considering it, because I had moments of kind of being offended and kind of being bothered. And at the end of the day, I went, I don't need to protect myself against them. I don't need to prove that we belong or that we matter. 500,000 people a year have already said that we belong and we matter. And 50 plus food trucks every month have already said that we belong and we matter. And the success that we've had within our organization has proven that we belong and we matter. So if they want to compete, if they want to draft off of us, let them. I'm not threatened, I'm not scared. I don't have anything to prove. Now, one of the things that fits inside of here that I want to say out loud, and we've talked about this in a previous episode, we talked about the idea of safety and preference. I'm not saying leave yourself defenseless. If somebody intends harm, intends damage on you, then we just don't engage. Not playing that game. But at the end of the day, they're just trying to copy us. And we prove more by maintaining who we are than by trying to protect ourselves. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. And again, this is the place where I say it incomplete. I say it messy. I say it raw. Because I still reflect on that season. I still reflect on the things that were happening then. And I wonder about what it all meant. But I do know this. I love that we went. I love that in that moment we went, let them. We're going to do what we do. We're going to be who we are. We're going to live inside of that. My job isn't to beat them. My job was to be what we are. And I think that it says something about what matters. Around that same time, I got an email from there was an event in New York City that they did food trucks, live music. They did a lot of the same things that we did, and they had seen us. I won't go into the details how they had seen or heard about us, but they'd seen and heard about us, and they sent me an email. And in the email, literally the email said, almost like it wasn't the first sentence. I think it was like the third sentence. The third sentence of the email was, "How is it you guys are kicking our asses?" I was like, this is weird. And I said, hey, let's just get on a call and let's talk about it. And whenever we got on this call, they were asking all these questions about the things that we had done structurally and the ways that we had done marketing and promotion and all the things that we'd done to kind of grow. And they'd done some of the same things as us. They'd done them in some of the same ways as us. And they were trying to figure out what the differentiator was. And at some point, I just asked them, what happens at the end of the night, like within your event? And we had talked through like how it starts, what the flow of the night was, what all that was. And they got to the end of the night. And I said, when the night is over, kind of what happens there? And their director said, end of the night, we have security. Security kind of clears the streets. We do all this. And you know, he made a comment just in passing about having to separate truck owners. I was like, why do you have to separate truck owners? And he said, a lot of times they would get in fights. Owners of trucks would get in fights over customers that were stolen or ideas that were stolen or any of these kinds of things. I was like, why are they like, where's that come from? Because for you guys, you're having to clear the streets because there are fights. And for us, we're having to clear the streets because our truck owners are standing out in front of their trucks, drinking a soda at the end of the night and trading war stories, telling stories about crazy things that had happened or, you know, lines that they dealt with or crazy orders that they'd had, or they were telling all these stories from the night or stories from the previous month, or they were sharing all these stories. And it was like, there was like this community that was being born right there among all these food truck owners. And it wasn't defensive and it wasn't protected. It was them in their own way celebrating each other's successes. And I'm not going to lie, that felt really good. It felt really good that they could celebrate each other's successes. Now, Are the trucks competitive? Absolutely. They want to have great nights. It wasn't that there wasn't competition there. It was that somehow they had realized that this wasn't a zero-sum game where in order for me to win, you have to lose. They could celebrate each other's successes. And I can say this, 10 years later, the last time I was doing H&H stuff was 2014. It's now 2026. So 12 years later. A lot of those owners are still celebrating each other's victories. Now they're restaurants. Now they're entrepreneurs at a different season of life, and they're still happy for each other. And in New York City, the food truck owners fought over customers, over space, over perceived offenses. In Oklahoma City, there was a different outcome, and that different outcome was birthed in the culture that was here. And I think it was tied to the fact that when a competing event tried to start and we said, let them, I think that sent a signal. It wasn't an intentional signal, but it was a signal nonetheless. And I think whenever we have this posture that says, I don't have to be defensive and I don't have to protect myself and I don't have to win at everybody else's expense, it sent a signal. And I think those signals matter. I think those signals matter in our families. I think those signals matter in our friendships. I think those signals matter in our companies. I think that we send signals by the things that we protect. And I hope that we can settle into that idea for a second. We send signals in the things that we protect. We send signals in the things that we permit. And those signals aren't necessarily written down. They're not necessarily promoted. They're not necessarily repeated. They're not necessarily even clearly defined, but they are felt. What are the things that are felt by what we permit and what we protect? And I don't mean grandstanding. I don't mean the things that we're making a point to do, but the things that we're doing that just naturally flow out of, again, those habits, those rituals and routines that are cultivated and practiced. And I think it also shows up in the idea of scarcity. I think it shows up in the idea of scarcity. My dad always talked about. I hope that this makes sense. One of the things that my dad would talk about is he would talk about the poverty mindset, and the poverty mindset wasn't about how much money we had or didn't have. It is now we would label it as the scarcity mindset, and it's the scarcity mindset that is walking around with this fundamental fear that what we have is going to be taken. And I don't want to live there. And I'll be honest, it's probably one of my biggest struggles. I don't know if it's a cultural thing, Oklahoma being an oil and gas industry, and it's such a feast or famine industry. When people make money, they make a lot of money. When they lose a lot of money. I don't know if it's part of that. I don't know if it's just a fundamental human struggle, but I wrestle with that scarcity mindset. And the thing, and I wrote this down because I wanted to reflect this as accurately as I could. And it's a question that I want to ask. Consider this and tell me if you think this could be real or not. Scarcity becomes real because we act as if it already is. Is that possible? Is it possible that scarcity becomes real because we act as if it already is? Because most scarcity isn't discovered. It's enacted. It's this self-fulfilling prophecy that I don't think we even realize that we start the snowball rolling down the hill that turns into an avalanche. Because when we assume loss, we protect ourselves, we narrow what's possible, and then we blame the world for being small. And I'll be the first one to say, I've made that mistake 1,000 times. Maybe I'm the only one. Maybe there's not a big list of us that does that, but I have made this mistake at least 1,000 times. And I want to say that again. We assume loss, we assume scarcity. And in doing that, we protect ourselves. Then we narrow what's possible because we're spending the energy and effort protecting ourselves. And the logical outcome of that is that then we blame the world for being small. I want to turn that on its head. I want to turn that on its head. And I'll be honest, because this is a pattern across my life. I'm kind of tired of expecting the worst and assuming the worst. Kind of tired of that. Kind of tired of falling into that trap because I've fallen into it a lot. Because fear is loud in the moment. Fear is loud. Fear is panic inducing. Fear is heart pounding. When you zoom out, it's rarely the thing that shapes the future. Fear isn't the thing that shapes the future. The world moves forward because more people build than barricade. The world moves forward because more people build than barricade. When we look back over the arc of human history, when we look back over the framework of centuries and epochs, we see that it's not protection that defines the future. What defines the future and defines where we're going is people who build bridges instead of barricades. I want to be that. I want to be that. So in the moment where people ask questions, where they want to discover, where they want to learn, I want to be. A good friend of mine years ago, his name was John. John would always talk about living life with an open hand. And in that open hand, you are vulnerable because somebody can take, somebody can grab, somebody can knock it out of your hands. People can do damaging things. But that the most fulfilling way of living is with that open hand, because that is the posture to receive as well as give. I like that idea. I want that to be the thing. And I don't want to be threatened by people where there's overlap. I don't want to be threatened by people who might think similarly to me. I had this conversation with my coffee client years ago because as more and more coffee shops opened in the same city that they were in, I told him, I said, can we celebrate other shops' wins? When somebody wins an award, when somebody gets national notoriety, when somebody here gets positive press, can we say, great job? Can we celebrate that? Because you have more in common with them than in difference. You have more in common with them. These are actually the people that are most likely to be your friends because they love the things that you love. They're in your industry. They care about the things that you care about. So can we be secure enough to celebrate their wins? Because in celebrating their wins, you're actually adding seats at the table. And when we add seats at the table, I think we win. I'm going to leave this last little bit, some questions. Actually, I just want to leave this last little bit. Not the questions, just this. Comparison poisons the work. Clarity frees it. The work doesn't ask you to defend your place. It just asks you to inhabit it. Can you just live in what it is that you are? Can you be secure in what it is that you are? Can you be confident? Can you be secure? Because the truth is, when I look back at people in my life, in my history, that have been the most inspiring to me, they're the people that wear that really well. You know, those people that just exude that confidence, not arrogance, confidence. And somehow they bring the best out of everybody around them. And I'm not here to say that I am that person. I'm here to say that I want to be that person. I would like to be that person. And at the end of the day, it kind of falls back on the phrase, and you've probably heard this before. It's pretty common, but I want to fall back on this idea of living in a culture where all ships can rise. We can win. Not because of fear, not because of protection, not because of scarcity, but we can win. And this is where I say it messy before you assume that it was tidy all along. See you next week.